In this class, we're going to be looking at some specific examples of night photography and how I worked the image, how I exposed, and so forth, to give you some ideas. What I'd like to do is be able to have you gain some possibilities, some ways of working, some just ways of thinking when you're getting outside and shooting at night in all kinds of conditions. Well, first we're going to look at the lights themselves. Sometimes when you're outside, you can be where there's neon lights, there's other colorful lights that can be just really interesting for themselves. But if we're not careful in exposure and some other things, we can run into trouble with them. Those lights are everywhere, though. I mean, you don't have to go to Las Vegas to find the dramatic lights at night. You just keep your eyes open and you'll find all sorts of really interesting colors, forms, shapes, and so forth. Now, on this image, which is taken at a small restaurant, believe it or not, in Florida, not a place that I would have expected to have seen neon or anything like that at all, but I was out with some friends and having dinner and just happened to see that, and I said, I got to get a picture of that. It is the colors, the graphics. I mean, if you look at the colors here, you've got this nice green, and then down here you've got this red slash of neon, and then against the black sky. I thought, well, that's cool. I really have to do that. Now, you might wonder, what the heck was I doing with a camera? Well, I will often take a camera along with me just because there's really neat little opportunities like this for cool pictures at all times. And if you don't have a camera, you never get those pictures. So I will have a camera along at times. This particular picture, though, I was down in Florida on an assignment doing some work there, and I was there with some other people. And so I had my regular camera, tripod, and so forth. But again, here I am at night. I've got people that I'm having dinner with, and they're not going to tolerate me sitting outside with a tripod, setting everything up and trying to do that. So what I actually did was set the camera up for a higher ISO, not too high because I didn't want to get too much noise, and then I shot this. Now, it was important to me to get the colors in the neon. Now, when you look at all the lights here, they have a very rich color to them. They're not washed out. One of the challenges you have in a picture like this is the dark sky. That dark sky can make meters really give too much exposure because the meter doesn't know it's a dark sky. The meter just says it's dark, and the meter wants to make it lighter, so it will try to overexpose situations like this. So you have to be really careful, and what I did here was I simply took a picture and took a look at it in my LCD to make sure that it looked kind of what I wanted it to do, and it wasn't quite right at first, so I just adjusted my exposure slightly to make sure that the colors were captured properly. Took a second picture and I was done. And compositionally, all I was working with is, again, that big area black and that stripe of red down at the bottom, and against the green palm tree, which was just so fascinating to me. I thought the colors, everything in it really worked well. Another thing to be careful of on things like this is that if your exposure is too high, you can sometimes pick up some noise in some of the dark areas, particularly in the sky under higher ISO settings. So I wanted to make sure that the sky could be pure black. Now, if the dark areas are simply bright, okay, you've just made them brighter and you're making them darker in Photoshop, you won't have much of a problem with noise. What I'm talking about here is that because we have an inherent kind of tendency to have more noise when we're shooting under these conditions with a higher ISO setting, is that big blank expanses of areas like that sky will tend to show up more noise. So I wanted to make sure that it was dark enough and would actually work well dark, so that I would not have that noise problem. And this picture has very little noise in it. And so it worked out well. I liked all the colors and the way that they were coming together. Now here's another image that has some similar things, although this one you'll see is quite a bit different as to how much area is black and how much area has color. This was shot in the downtown area of Las Vegas, where there are some historic signs, really cool, fun to photograph. And in this particular case, again, you can see the black sky. You can also see the lights have good color to them. And this, I had to be a little bit careful. I didn't want to wash out the horse that's in the background, so I had to make sure that my exposure was okay for that. On the other hand, I didn't want it too dark for the lights that are in the foreground. This is actually an Aladdin's lamp. But if they were too dark, then some of those dark areas that you'll see within the frame would get a little bit heavy. And I didn't want that to happen. So what I was trying to do is to get a balance between that. This one was shot handheld. When you're out in this area, you could use a tripod, but it kind of draws too much attention to you. So I'd rather just shoot handheld. But there's a lot of light here, obviously. So I can use a moderate ISO setting, and again, exposing to get the colors right. And I did check. I took more than one picture because these are tricky. When you have all these bright lights in the dark areas, it's real tricky to be sure that you have exactly the right exposure. So I took several exposures to make sure that I got it right and that I wouldn't have any problems, in this case, any problems with color.